So something slightly different. I play a game called Wing Fighter. This is a screen from Wing Fighter, and if you're not really interested in playing Wing Fighter, then you can probably skip this video because it's got nothing to do with building anything at all. It's just purely talking about Wing Fighter. What I want to talk about it is that there's a couple of things about the game that I've been playing for around 3-4 months now that I need a bit of discussing and need a bit of a deeper dive, I feel. The game itself is a vertical shooter. It's like an old school vertical shooter where you buy upgrades for your ship and you go and fight things and shoot down planes and helicopters and tanks and all that sort of jazz. And one of the things that it does is to keep you hooked is it lets you upgrade your ship, and your ship has power, like base power ratings and all that sort of stuff. And you can see that at the top of the screen here where it says 481738. It's the power of the craft itself. So this video is really looking at this ship going through one of the levels that I was stuck on for around about a week. And I will unpause it and we'll go on to the next screen on the video. And here we go. It's onto the map screen. So the map screen's basically how far through I am the game. And I'm up to map 49 on this particular point in time. And map 49 took me about a week to actually complete. And that's kind of where we're at this point. So 49 is where we're at, and this video will be going through map 49, and we're looking for some specific things going on here, because straight after doing this map, which was the first time that I've gone through it, I reran it straight away. So I went from having spent a week on it and really struggling to get through. It was very hard. All of the mobs were really difficult to blow up, to the very next time, and it was really easy, like outrageously easy. So I thought I'd build this video to compare the two tracks together to see what the difference was, and it was quite an interesting difference. I've paused it on this screen because I want to make sure that we can see that in this top section we've got the choose your skill, and you've got these two bars. The two bars represent the powers you have chosen, your upgrades, and the one I'm choosing here and the one I chose in the second run through is the same one again. It's the main gun advance. It's the best one to start off with. So let's unpause it and we'll continue. Unpaused. Here we go. We're into the game. This is what it looks like pretty much all the time. You've got your big guns going out front, and you can see all the damage numbers going over the top of the ship. Wing Fighter is based on killing waves of planes or aerial vehicles. And once you've killed all the aerial vehicles in that wave, then it will progress on to the next wave. It doesn't care about the ground-based mobs. So you could ignore all the ground-based mobs, and as long as there's a plane alive, the ground will just continue scrolling, and you'll always get new ground-based mobs to attack. So I've just paused it for a second there, and I'll release it and go back into, here's the next tracking. So on the left hand side here we've got the original first time through, and on the right hand side we've got the second time through, which was literally done less than a minute later. And you can see from that top bar that you've got the same power-ups in that orange section on the left. You've got a little picture of the main gun, and you've got a little picture of the main gun, and then the options that are upgrading along the bottom, I'm choosing again the main gun advance, which increases the damage output. So let's unpause it and we'll have a look at what's going on in the next section. So I paused it on this screen to compare the damage numbers that we've got going on in the back here. This is the main gun attack primarily, and I've specifically paused it on this one because the main gun is the primary damage output. And on the left hand side, which is the first time through, you can see that top number there, it's 54,700. Whereas on the right hand side, the same attack on pretty much the same mob does around about 127,000. So even at this very early stage, before the power-ups change and the types of the fighter on the left and the fighter on the right deviate from their specifications, we can see that you do basically twice as much damage once you've completed the level versus your first time through. So the second wave there, both used the critical upgrade, so both of the craft were still running the same at the same time. But already you can see that on the right hand side it's onto wave 5, and the one on the left is only just entered wave 4. And the one on the right is basically just walking through the mobs, and the one on the left is really struggling to kill stuff, and it's being chased around by bullets a lot more. And it becomes more apparent over time that the one on the right hand is just going so much faster through the mobs because it's basically doing double damage versus the first time through the level. As an anecdotal point, the first time through this, it took 22 minutes to complete that left hand track, and on the right hand side it took 11 minutes. And it was that was basically when I initially started that right hand track straight after. I was like, hold on a second, this is significantly different. I'm just chewing through the mobs, and it was even just the first mobs in the map. So there's definitely something going on here. So what could it be? Why is the game making it easy once you're past the level? Especially when you consider that the game is based on the power of your ship and upgrading the ship. So it doesn't really matter whether or not they've deliberately made it easy afterwards. You get like a farming boost to be able to just keep you progressing, or if they've made the level just outrageously hard the first time and halved your damage. It doesn't really make much difference because you've invested time, energy, and effort into developing your ship's power ratios. If those power ratios and the power figures don't actually equate to something that's on the screen, then what's really the point? How can that actually be justified? Because it means it undermines all of the power upgrade options that you're doing. And here's the bit that really sort of shows it up, is if we have a look on the right hand side, we're on wave 14, and we'll get this big bomber comes down, and we drop there's a whole bunch of aerial mines drop down, and we get some extra fighters coming in to attack us. And the right hand side, it lasts for like literally a second or two. So there's the first big ship gone in less than a second. It wasn't even on the screen fully yet. Then we've got the bombers done within the space of another 2 or 3 seconds. That's it, it's done. Whereas I will pause it again when we get a bit closer to the other side and the same point on the map, because if you look at the left hand side, it's 5 levels behind. The other thing that was noticeable as well, and you've noticed this in other maps within the game, is once you've completed the level, you're much more likely to get good sets of power-ups, because the power-ups that it offers you are random from a pool of power-ups. But once you're past the level, it more often than not gives you a good set of power-ups to get through it. The example here, in this particular instance, on the right hand side, I had already had the main gun to its maximum power by wave 12, whereas on the left hand side I think it's like wave 20, 24 or something like that, they actually get it up to full strength. So the left hand side is coming into the next level now, the level with the bomber on the end of it. And you can see it's already struggling with the first big ship, which it's damaged, its health bar is basically not moved from being in the full stream of the attack for a full length of time, and it's still not really going down very fast. You can see the aerial bombs going around, whereas on the right hand side they were destroyed within, you didn't even see them, they were just destroyed. And it just really does show, yes, the left hand side hasn't got its gun in its main power, so it is doing half the amount of damage at this particular point, a specification to specification comparison, but it still takes a very long time to kill it. And here we see the right hand track is literally twice as far through the map as the left hand track. And you can see again, the left hand track just finished the first time it hit that bomber, and the right hand track has finished the second time it hit the bomber, and it still just destroyed everything in front of it to get past the bomber really, really fast. So it is definitely a significantly noticeable difference. Well, I don't really mind it, because, you know, the left hand side, I felt a huge amount of satisfaction of finally managing to get through it, but it does undermine it a little bit when you go back into it and go, oh, it's dead easy. And you can't ever go back and find that hard level again if there is a damage booster as soon as you pass the level, because you're already too powerful for it, and there's no way to power your craft's abilities down to get that same experience again. It's always about progression forwards. So it's a bit of a shame, I think, because it means that you've got no repeatability. You couldn't go back to the game with a new specification and say, right, I'm going to play this from the start again, because the game's already recognizing you as progressing through, so it's always going to give you an easy time. And which is why I think when you see some other videos online, is that it's always a video of them succeeding on the map, and you don't know if it's the first time they've succeeded on the map or it's the second time they've succeeded. It could be a vastly different experience from one to the other. Is that on this one, the left-hand side is really struggling, having to do a lot more dodging, whereas the right-hand side, quite often things are killed before they're even on the screen. Admittedly, we're up to wave 37 now, and the right-hand side, its damage output is now no longer beyond what the game's design is. It's actually, the mob's health is actually catching up with it, and it's taking a little bit longer to kill everything, but still, it's not hard. There's a couple of dodges to do, whereas the left hand side is having to use its Titan's powers all the time. Smart bombing died on some stupid stuff because it's just fatigue effectively, but you can see it really has to work hard to actually kill some of the bigger planes, and the ground-based stuff especially. It really struggles with the ground-based stuff. The one on the left hand side will skip things. There you go. Left hand side's finally got its main gun, and it's a whopping difference between it. All of a sudden it just destroys everything really, really quickly. But with the damage doubling from succeeding to have been through the game already, the right hand side is effectively doing 4 times the amount of damage as the left hand side was doing when it gets its super gun. Here you see the right hand side going through the last bomber run. There was a bit of dodging to do, things survived a little bit longer. Using the training from the tower defense mode of the game, stay on the right hand side, stay in the same kind of place, keep your fire solid up the side of the screen so anything bouncing off the side of the screen gets double hit, and everything will eventually come to you if you follow that line. And we're on to the boss now. So you can see what I do on the boss here. This one's a bit of a nightmare, so it's straight into Titan mode to do the to avoid that alpha hit, which always catches us out. The main gun is powerful enough to just chew through the rest of the mob, and likewise here, Titan is still going, so I can just safely ignore it. And there's just enough Titan left to get under the last one and drop a smart on its head and wipe out the mob at the end. The left hand side does it the same way, and that's a really good way of getting through that three-faced boss. So we're going up to 42. 42 is normally a big boss or a big mob. In this, I think in this particular one, we're getting multiple ships down at the same time. So here we go, you get the warning to say the strong foe is incoming. And the first ship comes in, it's just a single double shot ship. It's fairly straightforward. You don't really need to use much technique on this one. The only main thing to be aware is when you have those double blue shots coming towards you, make sure you move and then stay still for when they're going to be launched. Otherwise they split like that. You can see it, whereas sometimes they both follow each other, and another time they split across. It's because I'm moving at the same time. So it's much better to wait for the two blues, then move, wait for the two blues, then move, and make sure you're in your final position before the next set of blues are launched. Another thing to note is you can see while I'm picking the enhancements to the ship on this first run through, it's not giving us amazingly good options each time. It seems like there's definitely a different random table for first time through or no success and already successed. Whereas by now all of the guns were at maximum power, all of the magnet was at maximum power and such like. Here you really sort of see the difference between the two. There's a lot going on and there's a lot coming through right now. It's one thing to always be aware with those mines is don't ever blow any of them up behind you, because they explode into small parts and they explode in the opposite direction to where you were. So on this particular version, I don't really get a chance to stay still like I was recommending for the other one. Whereas here you see this laser turret that's just gone past me didn't even make it onto the screen on the other one. So, well, at this point in time, it probably wasn't even at this point on the map, so I wasn't even facing the lasers at the same time. But this ship really still struggles to actually kill the lasers at the same time as everything else. So, finished with that one, and now we're on to the last mob. This being an interesting comment really. The progression game gets harder, but the end bosses don't seem to get any harder. They get a little bit more hit points, but they don't get any more complex. So this guy is really quite difficult to kill if you don't use Titan and smart him, because every single wave has something that would quite easily kill you. Whereas when you're facing some of the bosses from the earlier parts of the game and the later parts of the game, they're just as easy to kill as the first time around. It would be nice if these guys had have scaled somewhat or had some extra secret parts to their attack that it didn't have before. Here you can see the difference of the damage. The second time through it killed this with a smart bomb, and that was it. Whereas this time round, it got the smart bomb, but it still didn't kill it. So you still had to do a whole bunch of dodging around it as well. There we have it. First time through on the level 49.